Okay, so how am I gonna describe this one? So just furthering on from what I was talking about in the last video, so using sight or vision or looking as a kind of contemplative, if that's the word, practice or an insight gateway. Here's one to try. So maybe this is original. I noticed this when I was younger, and then ever since the deepening of my practice, it's become more apparent as something, and it's been quite helpful to me. So I'm going to try and explain this, right? So for me, a lot of the teachings that are out there will focus on sound. That seems to be a helpful point for people. But for me, for some reason, the vision, the looking, seems to be more of a catalyst for insight. I like to look at things. So try this. So let me try and explain. So when you're looking, but you're not thinking, you're present, and you look around and you look at something, maybe this is personal to me, I don't know, but you look at something and it gives you kind of like a feeling. Seems to be somewhat of an emotional thing. Let's see. Yeah, it seems to be some sort of an emotional thing. It seems to be something inside the body, maybe. That's what it seems like initially, but it can't be. Because there's no separation. But that's initially what it seems like. I could describe it as an emotional feeling memory that's experienced in the present moment. And there are different flavours of this, absolutely. Anything you look at. So look at something. You have to be empty. You have to be clear to experience this. But see, you look at something, and I can't really describe what that emotional feeling memory is, but it's definitely there, and it's definitely something there. And it becomes very interesting because you're not just looking at things. These images have a content to them. And if you wanted to, you could almost like make a story out of it. I spent ages trying to figure this out. Like, what is this? Are these like memories stored in objects, or whatever? I don't care. It doesn't really matter. But it's a very interesting phenomenon. I don't really hear anyone talk about this. But it's like these different flavors, and you can go around and you can You can experiment with it, and you can experience all these only accessible when you're in a state of no thought. As soon as you start thinking, the emotional content of the thought completely wipes it. So you have to be clear to experience this, and you just look at. Some of them will come up, and they're definite memories. My memories, like, so for example, you hear a song and it reminds you of a certain time in your life. That's a good one. Or you like taste or smell something, and that kind of sense experience brings back a memory. So you've kind of anchored that sense perception to a memory. Yeah, some of them definitely are that, but most of them are something else, and that's what's interesting about it. They're unique. Every single one of them is unique. It's definitely a form of thought. It's definitely a kind of different layer. I mean, they talked about the layers of the thoughts. It's definitely a different layer of thought. So you're tapping into some level of thought. It could be some sort of subconscious memory store or something like that. But you're not really thinking. You're not thinking. You could make thoughts from it if you want. Like I said, you can make the little story, but it's not a narrative. It's like again, hard to describe. But it's a good one to try, because you need to have a level of presence to be able to perceive that. And it's the same with sounds. Maybe for some people the sounds and the hearing might be more potent, but for me definitely it's the visual thing. You're exploring a different level of your mind, essentially. But I can go deeper. I can go deeper. I can go straight through it into nothing but just this. So it's a good gateway, because it almost takes you halfway there. So it's kind of like contemplation. So you can choose. This might be a good thing to do if you, for example, have some sort of like scenery. Say you're going to walk or something like that, and that would be an easy way to do it if you had some nice kind of scenery before walking in the park, and just choose an image, choose something picturesque, and then just contemplate on it and spend a good while just looking at it, looking for these levels of content, and then just peeling the content away until there's nothing but this. And I find that a really good way to do that, because you're cutting through the thought. You need to have a certain level of focus to kind of discover that content there, and it's very interesting. But if you go along with that, you go and you keep looking for long enough, the content then just, you go deeper, the content dissipates. And then you just have a pure connection with what is. If I was to make a judgment on the ego state, I would say that it's a disservice to a disservice to the experience that could be had, the appreciation. Describe it as appreciation, I guess that's a good way to describe it. That the world could experience itself like this. And that's always there, but it's just obscured by that mind. It dims the senses. And it's a shame. Again, that's just a thought, that's just a judgment, but if I was going to say anything, it would be that. And another good one is, well, whilst we're at it here, I can focus on one point. Whilst you're focusing on that point, can you be aware of what's around it without directly looking at it? Move out, move out, move out. Move out to the peripheral. And then the sounds as well. Integrate the sounds with the image until it's the one sense. Move out, keep moving out. Be aware of you, your separation, your body. Where does it start? Where does it end? Keep moving out. And then you'll see that these distinctions start to break down. I said in the previous video that all you need to do is be present. It kind of is that simple, but I don't know how this happened for me. I can't really. It was that for me, these insights, they just kind of came along. For me it was making the habit there, presence all the time, and then within that, if you can put it like this, within that, here, nothing but this, just this, and it starts to, I would say, deepen or expand. The world continues to move, the form continues to dance around, but it's that steady space, if you can put it like that, being there as much as possible with openness. And it's kind of like an acknowledgement an awareness, a disidentification from the self, but I wouldn't quite say it an identification with something. Yeah, an identification with something. It's difficult to put it into words. As I always say on my catchphrase, being there enough, long enough, until it becomes effortless, the insight starts to come, and it's difficult to describe what insight is like. It quickly turns into thought, and again you just move out, let go of everything. It quickly turns into thought, and then you start to re-identify with it. The person clings on in very kind of sneaky ways, but you just keep, it's just continually doing that, continually doing it. It's easy to say. The practice, it requires effort and focus and attention a lot, all the time at the beginning. And there are times after the shifts that the mind and the person has more movement to it. It's more active, definitely. But there's that degree of separation there. That's enough. That you're not touched by it. It doesn't take you. It doesn't take you away. But I think the biggest kind of realization is that you're not the person. You're not this finite form, and it's so obvious. It's so obvious. When you realise that, it's like coming home. It's like I said before, it's like waking up. Again, difficult to put into words, but if you even think about it with the mind, it's obvious. You're not going to last forever, and that's fine. There's nothing you can do about it other than wake up. But it's not really the person that's waking up. It's something else waking up out of the person. But the person still functions as it did before. And everything's okay. Everything's always been okay. And it's knowing that is where the peace comes from. Okay, so I just watched that last video back and I realised that without the context, I was pretty much talking shite. Yeah, I go into these videos and just kind of wing it. I don't have any sort of idea of what I want to explain and why, and there's no structure to it, so sometimes I just ramble without actually pointing out the thing that's important. So the practice that I explained there, I'll add this onto the video, is important because what I described with that layer, that deep layer of thought in the landscape in regards to your visual perception and that content that's there, why that's important is because that's the subtle framing that's just there, that's very difficult to spot. And why that's a good practice, I think, is because first of all, you have to be very attentive to notice these, that kind of emotional thought memory content that's there. That level of thought that's just there. I think it is a level of thought, it doesn't really matter, but it's there. When you direct your awareness towards that and you become aware of it, until you're aware of it, it's there, and obviously you're not aware of it. It directs it almost has an influence over your perception of the world until you bring it in, you expand out and you bring it into your kind of sphere of awareness. So that's what I was going for, explaining that practice there. So if you can find that content and it's a fun little practice to do. If you can find it, become aware of it, and then dissolve it, it's a very powerful practice. I've seen this described with hearing as the catalyst or the medium of or the object of meditation before. It's pretty much the same thing as I'm describing. But yeah, I don't think I really laid out the context with my explanation in the last video, so I'll just add this on to the end.